Hey Rockstars, I'm JB, expert salesperson and master presenter.
I'm the doctor, psychologist, and behavioral expert.
This is the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab podcast.
We're high-performance coaches that help service-based professionals and entrepreneurs take their skills to the next level.
70% of entrepreneurs fail, which is why every week we have real talk with real entrepreneurs to help ensure you are not one of them.
We're also the inventors of the Be Rich mindset,
where we rise to mastery,
inspire greatness,
celebrate knowledge,
and help others along the way.
So join us in the lab.
And now, on to the show.
Welcome back to the EML podcast. I'm JB.
I'm the doctor.
Thank you for all of our listeners joining us again. You've been checking in every week, and we appreciate you more than we can put into words. You keep coming back. Sometimes we don't know why you do, but thank you. Thank you for listening in.
I'm assuming it's because I'm on the podcast.
Oh, it's 100% you. It's not my voice. And if you are new to checking out this podcast, you have picked the right one to check out. I don't know if you're commuting. I don't know if you're sitting in your bathtub, sipping on some wine, but you're going to have some fun with us today. We have some great conversations, real talk with real professionals every single week. And this week, especially in the last couple of weeks, has been pretty exciting for us because we've celebrated our 52nd week, right, Doc?
We have made it a year. We're alive and survived.
Woohoo. And he hasn't killed me yet. So we're doing something right.
As far as you know, that is not a clone.
All right. So 52 weeks, Doc. It's been a journey. We know that. We've really been able to celebrate this a little bit. Any idea what to expect in the next 52?
More greatness, I would imagine.
Yeah, always more greatness. You got to help me out with that.
Hopefully our listeners went back and have checked out the anniversary episode. I think it was fun. We had a good time kind of celebrating the journey along the way. And hopefully a lot of our listeners have been listening since the beginning and have seen the evolution that we've gone through in this lovely podcast.
I might still be hungover from our celebration. I'm not sure.
I mean, you stopped drinking?
All right, on with the show, Doc. We've got with us a guest I'm really excited to introduce to everybody. We've got Alex Brueckmann, who is a strategy entrepreneur, an author, an executive coach, an all-around great guy, a dad. Super pumped to have you join us, Alex. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you, JB. It's a great pleasure to be on your great show, and congrats on sticking around for a year, even longer now, because most podcasts don't even make it that long. So great job, guys.
Thank you. We early on, I think we read a statistic that the average podcast is something like 7 episodes and it loses steam. So we felt pretty good at 8. And then doing something right. You know,
and we did celebrate at 8.
We did, didn't we?
We made a really big deal. And we made it to 10. That was like,
yes. We shouted that out, I think, on the podcast. We were like, hey, see it through. So it's really fun to have you. And you happen to be one of our first international guests, believe it or not. So
really? Oh, yeah. I feel even more honored.
Well, if you can imagine, as we started this, it's pretty natural, I think, to turn around and say, okay, who do we know in our network that we can have conversations around entrepreneurship, around being a service-based professional? Who are we comfortable speaking with? Who can we screw up with? I mean, right? God forbid we're doing it wrong or something. Who can we have some grace with? And that's where it always starts. And then, we work through our network in 2 episodes. Now I'm done. It took some time. We worked through our network, and you and I were able to connect online, and was just really impressed by your background. We had a chance to have a conversation, and a lot of what you've done, the education that you've had, and so really happy to explore this internationally. So thank you for being our first.
Oh man, it's my pleasure.
So do me a favor and do our guests a favor, Alex. Just share with us a little bit about specifically kind of what you do, what you focus on. If you've got a specialty, what it is. We'd love to kind of just give a foundation for our listeners.
There are basically 2 streams in what I do. You already said I'm a strategy entrepreneur. So what does that actually mean? I do help large global corporations to get their head around redefining strategies, business strategies most of the time, but also sometimes in smaller increments, like the strategy of a business area and how does it connect to the bigger strategy of the organization. And sometimes it's even smaller than that, where you ask yourself, okay, in this area of the business, how do we need to refocus our sales? So I would help them work on a new sales strategy. So that's the work I do for large corporations. I wouldn't consider myself a strategy consultant in that sense, because I don't come in and tell them what I think they should do. Rather, I would come in and help them get their head around it. So I hold the space for them. I guide them through a certain process, use certain frameworks that I designed in order to get out of their heads onto paper what it's there. And often it's just fragments, and I help them to put it into a bigger cohesive structure. So that's what I do for large corporations. And then I have a completely different second stream of the work that I love. And that is working with fellow entrepreneurs like myself, people that build businesses that have been around for maybe a year, maybe 10 years, that have a feeling that there is more than what they have achieved. So I help them get their head around strategy in a different way, meaning I take everything that I've learned working with those large corporations and I reworked it, I restructured it in a way that it is actionable content for smaller companies, for entrepreneurs, so that they can use those frameworks in their specific context and therefore build better businesses, more profitable businesses that give them the income and the freedom that they like in life.
I love what you're doing. And maybe because it's familiar to me, because coming from a Fortune 50 company here in the United States and having a career in external sales, I felt like there was a whole lot that you have access to and you learn within these larger companies. And there's just this incredible mind meld there that you can draw from. And you don't get that, I think, as a small business owner, a lot of times as an entrepreneur, service-based professional, you don't have access to that unless you have a background in that.
Or you have a lot of money, because I mean, the people that we work with in those large corporations, and I did that when I was still a strategy manager in one of the biggest media corporations in the world. You work with McKinsey, you work with A.T. Kearney, you work with all these great minds out there. And just by working with them and talking to them and listening to them, you just soak up so much knowledge. And that's typically knowledge that you, as an entrepreneur, a smaller business owner, can access kind of in a way by using all the free resources that they put out there on their websites like mckinsey.com and all the articles and blogs and God knows what. But it's different to really working with them on a concrete project.
Yes, so the framework, the process, the things you talked about that you've developed in your business, that we develop in our business, that doesn't exist. That's the challenge with the free resources out there always. We get into this conversation where it's like, well, everything we talk about, you can probably access in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you can go to get MIT coursework and Harvard coursework online for free. But if you don't have a real way to understand how to implement it and in what order to implement it and when to implement, you're going to be missing all the really important pieces to put it together so it works well for you. So that's absolutely a huge advantage to what you bring to people. What brought you into this? I mean, I'm really curious, kind of, that this is a really cool thing you're doing. What drove you to do it?
I think the first aha moment in my life was during university. I really didn't like the discipline of strategy. It was super boring for me. And when I went into my first post-university job, I stumbled across strategy again, and I gave it a second chance, and all of a sudden realized that it actually is a lot of fun once it gets real corporate context and has real people and real issues to it, not just an academic background, right? So I stuck with it for some reason for several years, then became a management consultant. So I joined a management consulting company and realized that I worked more on processes than I worked with people, which I didn't like. So I added, on top of what I already knew, I added a proper executive coaching education, which helped me to ask the right type of questions, actually. So here things started to come together, and it all spiraled from there. It's not something that I really particularly planned in doing, but over the past years, I realized that if you combine strategic frameworks, executive coaching, and help people to get their head around a certain topic themselves, it's just incredible how much they own the topic which is completely different than if you bring in an external company, tell them what to do in order to be successful. Then the company leaves again, and they do something with that piece of paper or not. You never know, right? So rather than paying $1 million to a large management consulting firm that hands over a 350-page PowerPoint deck, I help them understand their environment by asking them the right kinds of questions. And that designs strategy from within. And therefore, people hold it in their hands and say, that's mine. I was part in designing that. I want to see this happen. And therefore, they stick around with it. They follow through and reap the fruits of their work, rather than stopping halfway through and be like, yeah, we never really wanted that in the first place. It's not our own baby. So that's how I came to do what I do. And then 2 years ago, when we were about to move from Germany to Canada, where my wife comes from, I figured I wanted to do the same here in North America that I did in Europe. And I'm doing it. But in addition, COVID hit and things changed a bit, and I became a dad for the first time. So my priorities shifted kind of. And I wanted to travel less and to be less in airplanes and airport lounges and spend time away from home, because I wanted to rather spend the time with my son. And that's when I figured, you know what, you have a lot in your brain. You need to repackage it in a way that it is accessible to different target groups. And this is when the idea was born to design course programs, self-directed learning programs for entrepreneurs, so that they can use those frameworks that I know of and that I've used successfully over quite some time now for their own business in their own context. And that's what I've been working on ever since.
So is it safe to say you've had a little bit of a shift from that large corporate environment where you were traveling to large corporations and working within to really focusing more on the small business owner and the entrepreneur?
Yes, that's fair to say.
That's awesome. I totally appreciate the change of priorities. Short story aside, I grew up, my father's a small business owner, entrepreneur, a doctor, ran his own practice, still running his own practice, and was very successful. Started his own practice 3 months before I was born. Did not see my dad a tremendous amount when I was really young. I'm not saying my dad wasn't present. He coached and he was active when and where he could be, but he was running a business. And as most of our listeners know, when you're running a business, you're really busy. So I made a commitment to myself when I was very young that I was going to be more available to my son. And I actually didn't hold true to that commitment until I left the corporate world. It's amazing how demanding that can be working within the large corporate environment. Either as a consultant or internally, to really kind of take the reins myself. And it's been a big difference. So I very much appreciate where you're coming from with that. I think a lot of our listeners probably do as well.
Honestly, for me, a breakthrough moment was standing in the shower in the morning, and in the radio, it was Ugly Kid Joe, Cats in the Cradle. And this song is exactly about what you just described.
That's a tearjerker.
Yeah. And I stand there and I'm like, oh my God. Because I had a very similar experience when I was young, like you described. My dad would be away most of the week. And I promised myself I would do differently as a dad. So this triggered a complete rethinking of how I earn my money. And I will never leave the corporate world. Let's be clear with that. As a consultant, I just enjoy working with those corporations so much. Awesome human beings that I work with. I really love working with my clients. But on the other hand, there are so many small business owners and entrepreneurs out there that do need access to those tools. And it's amazing to see how they just roll with it once they have it in their hands. It's never a lack of passion. It's often just they need, it's like a kid that sits in a sandbox and you give them those tools for the first time, and all of a sudden it's something different than just taking your hands and digging a hole. All of a sudden you can build something for real, like a real sandcastle.
It's pretty neat. I really enjoyed what you said about the difference in kind of giving them the means to take ownership. I come from the financial services industry, and a big kind of running joke in the industry is you get financial planners who give a 350-page plan to somebody, and like that's their transaction, and that's the relationship. It's like this plan where, that person doesn't understand half of what's in the plan. They're never going to look at the plan again. It's going to gather dust, and it's going to be no good in 2 weeks when life changes anyways. So to give somebody the ability to take ownership, to take part, I think, in the development of something really changes their behavior. And Doc, I'm kind of interested in your perspective on this, the difference when somebody's telling you versus actively engaging. It's got to be pretty meaningful in how people, I think, continue to engage on something, right?
I think that's also one of the biggest misconceptions around therapy, right? Is that we come in there and you find a therapist and they tell you what to do, when our real goal is just to have you figure out what to do and be a tool, a support to help you get there and figure out, the direction. Therapy, coaching, it's all very similar. Same idea with coaching, right? We're not here to tell you exactly what to do. We're here to help you figure out how to do it the best way to your ability, so it's sustainable and you can continue on when you're no longer with that coach or therapist.
So Alex, how besides COVID obviously causing a pivot, which it seems everybody we speak to has that challenge, I'm curious, how do you go ahead and how do you build out the clientele into arguably very different markets, right? I mean, you're doing similar things, but you've got large corporate and you've got small, medium-sized business, very different targets. How do you manage to that, if you don't mind me asking?
No, it's totally fine. For me, it's like listening to hip hop and heavy metal at the same time. I need both. And
at the same time?
Not simultaneously, but
Well, I mean, Public Enemy and Anthrax did it really well.
Yeah,
for example, yeah. And if you take Aerosmith and
Run DMC,
Run DMC, this was basically the moment that saved Aerosmith's career. So
right, and Jay-Z and Linkin Park, that was another.
There was another one.
It can be done.
It can be done, definitely. So it also can be done in the corporate world and with entrepreneurs. Let me put it that way. In the corporate world, I live off my reputation and my network. So it's not that I'm constantly chasing new clients. The projects that I commit to are typically long-running projects that require quite some of my time. So I juggle a handful of projects at best at the same time for large corporations. And it's a completely different type of work. It's the work that I do. I really show up. It's my face. It's my work. When it comes to entrepreneurs and the type of work that I do for small business owners, this is often work that I can build and create together with other people. So I have a team that helps me with that, that help me with pulling together the online courses. I pour all my brain power out, and then they run with it and design something around it that works. So they basically, I wrote the book that will come out early next year, and they took the book and created a course based on the content of that book. And the work that I do for entrepreneurs is kind of providing knowledge, providing access to tools, providing exercises that help them really get their own brain active and create something on their own. And then I'm there as a coach to help them when they hit a barrier. So I'm not consulting them step by step. I'm helping them once they hit a barrier, and they can reach out, and I have a phone call with them. And I ask them 2 or 3 questions to help them either maneuver around the barrier or remove it completely, depending on what they encounter. So when you build a business or when you scale a business, it's very often just the access to knowledge, to tools, to methodologies that already help you a great deal. But still, even with the best tools in your hands, sometimes you hit a roadblock. And that's when I'm there to help them remove the roadblock. So it's a different kind of work. It's not face to face and live all the time. Often it's providing knowledge, having them run with it. And once they don't know what to do or how to get over a barrier, I'm there for them and hop on a call.
Actively engaging if and when you need to.
Exactly.
For your clients on call. Yeah, you're essentially on call. You got a beeper in a sense, right?
Kind of.
That's what I grew up with, a beeper going off at 3 a.m. Okay. But now I totally get it.
People still use beepers? I haven't seen one of those things in a long time.
I'm not going to show you mine. I don't have a beeper, I swear. What about you, Doc? Do you still carry beepers around as doctors?
I do not. Doctors and hospitals, I believe, still do though.
Yeah.
And probably firefighters and people that need to be kind of independent of the mobile network, right?
But I feel like technology has grown since then. So now you can just ping people on their phones the same way.
Yeah.
And now a word from our sponsor. It's the doctor from JB and the Doctor. Just wanted to talk quickly about our 2-on-1 coaching service that we offer, as well as our group coaching program that's also available. As high-performance coaches for service-based professionals and entrepreneurs, we are hyper-focused on improving your presentation and positioning, powering up your productivity, and supercharging your sales. As we all know, people, we're just different, and one size does not fit all. So it's important to work with those that understand this and can tailor their program and training specific to your needs. And that is exactly what we do here at JB and the Doctor. With our Mastery with Science system and approach, we provide both the how and the why, proven by experience and backed by science. So to take advantage of this truly unique approach with the expertise of 2 coaches providing you with the very best of self and business coaching, just check out our website at jbandthedoctor.com/services for more information or to schedule an exploratory phone call. That's jbandthedoctor.com/services.
Alex, the impression I get is, the when you're working the larger corporations in your business model, I mean, you need to be in it. It's not something that you really have the ability to outsource. The engagement levels are too high, it sounds like. Whereas on the, working with smaller, medium-sized businesses, you can really scale that out in a very, very different way. Do you have a vision on where you'd like the business to go? I know you already said, hey, I'm never going to be not corporate. Like that's always going to be a part of who I am and who my business is. I'm just curious, kind of what do you see the future looking like for you?
The reason why I do what I do is fueled by a purpose. And we quickly touched it already. It's being the best possible dad that I can be. And that means spending as much time with my son as long as he wants to spend time with his parents. There will be the moment when he's like, Dad, get out of my way. I want to play with my friends or God knows what, right? But until then, I really want to be there for him and just enjoy life with him because he's my only child. And I don't expect additional children to come my way. So I really want to use the time and soak it up myself. It's kind of a selfish motive in it as well, not only something for him. And if I look 5-6 years into the future, in an ideal world, the work that I do for entrepreneurs has scaled to a degree that I can live of it. And from time to time, I also do the odd corporate project just because that's what I love. And I hope to be able to continuously add value to both target groups. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Well, and I love that you touched on your why, and it's something so personal and simple. I think a lot of times people try to create whys when the real why is like right in front of you. It's sometimes easy to miss what's right in front of you. I thought that was a very helpful question. I'm gonna answer the question. I'm gonna draw us back for a minute because you first touched on right at the very beginning, discipline of strategy. And I kind of want to dig at that a little bit, what that means. And I want you to imagine for a second, your son's 19 months old. My son just turned 7. So think of your son as a 6 or 7-year-old. If you were to explain what you mean by discipline of strategy, so a 6 or 7-year-old would understand it. And just to be clear, I'm talking about myself to make sure I can understand it. How would you describe it?
What strategy is?
Discipline of strategy specifically. So is there strategy without discipline, or, kind of walk me through what you mean by that?
I think strategy is a largely misconceived concept. And the reason for that is because the term is being used all over the place, everywhere in the world of sports, in the world of business, you name it. And let me put it that way. The best strategies that I've seen come to life were not the strategies that you took a look at and be like, this is exactly 100% the right thing. The best strategies that I've seen were the 80% ready strategies where people were like, we're not going to wait until it's 100%. This is a waste of time. We we are executing on this now rigorously, vigorously, and without hesitation. And you need to have a lot of discipline for that. You need to be able to look in the mirror and say, we're not going to spend another 80% of our time to get the last 20% of this strategy sort of perfect. Side note, there is no such thing as perfect in strategy because we are talking about the future and no one knows it. So rather than doing that, you should just take this 80% strategy and follow through with everything you have. If you develop that kind of discipline on executing on what you have with an open mind to see when things work and when they don't work, and when they don't work, that's not the end of the world. That's just what strategy means. You try a route, and if that route doesn't work and you hit a roadblock, you go one step back and try a different one in order to get to your goal. This requires a lot of discipline, and not to be thrown off the horse immediately just because something doesn't go as you hope for. You know what I mean? That makes sense?
100% makes sense. I hear like this concept of action and execution. And, even within our own business, Doc and I, we have these conversations where it's, well, hey, let's revisit what we did. Did it work? Did it not work? Should we be making a change, or should we just be, to your point, rigorously and vigorously? I love that, by the way. Absolutely love that. What a great phrase for people to just remember. And it's important just to keep moving forward. And Doc, I think you probably recognize something that Alex was saying there in regards to, experimentation and the need to experiment, which we talk about all the time.
I mean, I'm a big proponent of life. Everything we do in life is just a big experiment. There is really no failures. It's really just change a variable and try again. You have a hypothesis, you think you know how it's going to go, you test it out and you find out if it works. And if it does, you go with it. And if it doesn't, you make an adjustment and go with it a different way. And that's really everything we do in life is like that. So it makes perfect sense why it'd be the exact same in business when creating a strategy.
Alex, I got to ask, having worked with so many corporations and individuals, small business owners, have you found that they're good at this or not good at this?
Some corporations and entrepreneurs, they understand it very quickly because it's in their nature, kind of. This is how they were brought up, how they experienced life in general. And others, not so much. They are often perfectionists and really want to have things their way, which is very dangerous and difficult to get when it comes to larger organizations. So they stand in their own ways, kind of waiting for the perfect moment to roll out the perfect strategy. And when they realize that the moment has long passed, they're disappointed, and right so. So it's easier for entrepreneurs, I think, because they come with a different mindset. They have experienced that things can be planned, but the plan very often needs to change because just things around it changed. And then it's easier for them to adapt to the situation, to see what they can learn out of the situation, even if it didn't go their way, and apply that learning just in the next go. It's just a big experiment. I like that a lot, what the doctor just said. And I give you a very practical example. When I designed my first website, when I started my business here in Canada, this website was geared toward corporations still. There was nothing in it for entrepreneurs and small business owners. Half a year down the road, I realized that I designed a website for my former clientele. And I started to re-engineer it. And then someone came around the corner and said, this is pretty cool, but what's the value for me as an entrepreneur in visiting your website? So I started to put free resources onto the website, and it's a constant evolution. So it's so different to most of the corporate websites that I know. They were designed some years ago and they still look the same, and it's still the same content, and nothing really happens. You know what I mean? So this is kind of my take on it.
So here I thought you and I had so much in common. We were going to get along. I asked you a question, and I get this from the doc all the time. I ask him a question, and I expect like this or that, but that's never what I get. I always get, what do I get, doc? What do you say?
Depends.
Freaking depends. It just depends. I do feel like I heard you say maybe, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it's kind of more that type A personality is more likely to kind of engage and take action immediately. And you run across that quite a bit in the entrepreneur space. I think it's pretty natural. You get people who want to go do something themselves. They want to be direct and leaders, and entrepreneurship allows them to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm hearing, I mean, I think the same things we hear all the time, right? Well, we say constantly, one size does not fit all. So it is going to depend on a lot of the people that you're working with, their own strategies that they have in their mind, their own thoughts of what they're expecting in their mind is going to play, and then their own scarcity level. Like a lot of times we wait for the 100%, not because that we don't feel that we need to be perfect. It's just we're afraid to make the step. So if we keep waiting and waiting, we have a reason. So there's so many.
It also comes down to, do I approach the way I operate my business from a learner's perspective or from a know-it-all perspective? And the learner's perspective is what I very often see with entrepreneurs, because they are curious. It's innate. They just created something out of nothing, and they explore everything with that open mindset. Whereas in organizations, you would always have to deal also with people that feel they know it all, that have the big title from the big business school, and kind of believe that their way is the only way that works. Now, having said that, I know how that feels, because I have a title from a business school and I was in big corporate before I became a consultant. So I know exactly why they behave the way they do. And they see people like me partly as a threat that help them, that don't help them, but make them look weak. It's an ego thing. And so my biggest job in the beginning is to help those people understand that I'm not their enemy, that I'm really in it to help them, that I'm not the one telling them what to do, but help them understand what they want to do in the first place. So it has a lot to do with how you approach people and how you guide people, rather than just approaching it from a business perspective, from a purely business perspective. I sometimes feel like more like a coach than a strategy, like an, how to say that? I feel more like helping people overcome their ego issues in those projects, rather than helping them figure out their strategy. Because once they've moved out of their own way, all of a sudden they collaborate differently. So if you have strong egos in a leadership team, for example, and everyone pursues their own agenda, it will be impossible for them to align on a winning strategy. So first of all, I need to help them understand what it needs to become a more functional executive team, and then we can talk strategy.
That makes perfect sense. Our number one job of our brain is to self-preserve.
Yeah.
So it puts the defense mechanism right in place. So if you're threatening their standing or their position, even if they feel that way, they're going to want to shut down anything that you're doing immediately, just for that reason.
I still want to meet a full-blown executive team that doesn't have some ego. It has not been my experience for the most part.
The ego is not a bad thing. I just help them to get it in check where it does not serve them well. They can still hold on to their ego, but they need to understand where it is healthy and where it's not healthy. And when it comes to designing a winning strategy, you have to step out of your own way. You need to have the results, the overarching results in mind, not your own results in the first place. So very often we approach strategy projects for large corporations in a way that we tell them, in those workshops, in those strategy sessions that we run, I'm not talking to you as the head of sales or the head of HR. I'm talking to you as a representative that should have the best of that company in their mind. Let's not think from current positions and job titles, because new strategy might mean new ways of working, new titles, new department structures. Form follows function. It's just like that. And if you design strategy around existing people and existing job titles and existing responsibilities, you will never have a strategy. You will have kind of an operational excellence plan in your hands, because you still do what you do, but you do it differently, kind of. So if you really want to make the leap as an organization, as an entrepreneur, think differently, move your ego out of the way, approach strategy work from a learner's mindset, from a curiosity's perspective, and it will just give you so much more better ideas that you can then put into a structure and formulate a strategy around it than if you try to cling on what you already have and not to lose it.
Alex, I just find that to be incredibly insightful. I love what you just said. And I want to drive a point home to our listeners, because whether or not you are within a large corporation or have a large team beneath you, we all need to excel in working with other people. And whether that's through networking, it's working through organizations, nonprofits, however you're building out and working within teams, you need to be able to take the lessons that you just talked about, the insight that you just gave, and you need to be able to apply it if you want to be successful. So there's a lesson here for all of our listeners. Doesn't matter if you're in a large corporation or not. This is something you can absolutely take and utilize. So, man, words of wisdom, man. I just love what you dropped there. That was fantastic.
It's just what I saw in my life, right? So it's nothing that I came up with, kind of imagined it. It's really what I saw many times. And if you don't realize that before you can create a winning strategy in your business, that you need to understand what's really motivating you. You need to understand your own ego patterns, your own purpose. It has a lot to do with you as a human being. And even if we talk strategy and business, we are talking what's inside of you. Because if you design a strategy that is not in line with your deepest desires, you're not going to stick with it. You only stick with it if it has that magic ingredient that makes you get out of your bed every morning, because then the motivation to follow through will not fade. It will be there every day, every day, every day, and you make it happen. So if you design strategy purely around profit, that's not going to work. You need to design strategy based on deeper desires, anything that is worth living, around something idealistic, around preserving the environment, about serving the community that you live in. Profit will come when you follow through on your purpose and when you load your vision, meaning the state of your organization that you want to achieve in the coming years, when you load it with that purpose. We're not talking about some mushy stuff here. We're talking about facts, about research-based academic facts that if you load your company with purpose, you will be more successful, you will be more profitable, it will be easier for you to find the right talent and to have that talent stick with you. It's just a fact.
It's a real gem, because you talk about discipline. How do you have discipline? Well, the easiest way to do it is to make it not that hard, right? And if we have to have grit, it's a lot easier about something that we enjoy. And to me, everything you just said right there at the end speaks to Simon Sinek, the infinite game, right? Having a purpose, having a greater vision for the business, and how that changes and allows people to take ownership and really create a much larger corporation and a much larger vision with purpose. Doc, I know you're itching, man. What do you got to say?
It also sounds a lot like the Be Rich mindset that we preach quite a bit. That is based in everything you just said. That all leads to, it all comes back, but you have to start somewhere. And that's what we talk about a lot with the Be Rich mindset. But speaking of our lovely listeners and the people out there, we heard that you had an awesome deal, giveaway, special sponsorship moment for them.
I do have a lot of free resources on my website that I just give away for free. Many of them rooted in the work that I've been doing over the past decade. So for example, there is a free strategy toolkit available that you can download at alexthestrategist.com. The button is right there on the landing page. It's a toolkit that helps you first of all, understand what a vision is and what a strategy is, how those things are connected. And it's a 20-something page workbook, basically, that helps you create a vision for your business, that helps you make that vision measurable in order to make it implementable, manageable, and then to break it down into, let's say, priorities that you follow through over the time to come in order to drive your company toward that vision. It's a process that I've been successfully using over many years with corporations. It is, in essence, the same process, but it's tweaked toward entrepreneurs, and the passion and energy entrepreneurs bring and the speed that they bring. Because in the end, the type of work that I do with large corporations and with entrepreneurs is the same. It's just packaged in a different way, because entrepreneurs are faster. They are just faster. They don't need all the extra steps. They don't often need all the alignment. They don't need to convince investors because they are the investor themselves. So alexthestrategist.com, download the toolkit and start working on your strategy, all for free.
That's awesome. And for all our listeners that are driving or, indisposed, in the show notes, you'll have access to any of the links as well as all of Alex's contact information. As always, you can check us out in the EML. We've got a ton of great professionals, including Alex in the EML. So if you want to contact him directly, that's another route you can do it. So take a look at the show notes if you have an opportunity. And Alex, man, fantastic conversation. Learned a ton. Really appreciate so much of what you had to say. Thank you again for joining us. You were fantastic.
Thank you guys for having me. It was really, really nice exchanging thoughts with you on those topics of purpose and strategy. Thanks a lot.
Look forward to the future conversations.
One of my favorite things, Doc, about doing these podcasts is the fact that I get to learn from each and every one of our guests. It's nice to be able to turn around and say, okay, well, here's a great application of what was said, and to be able to provide that to everybody else. But I'd be lying if I said that I don't personally get some great information and ideas for me to integrate in our business or my other business. And I really felt that way hearing from Alex, that there was a lot I took from it personally.
Yeah, I mean, he had a wealth of information. You can see he's been doing it quite a while with multiple streams, as he said. Don't cross the streams. That's what I learned in Ghostbusters.
Good Ghostbusters reference. I like that.
But yeah, it just, and the consistency, I think, through all our podcasts that I've learned over the last year is just how much the same messages resonate, right? So that we know we're doing the right thing. They know that if all these successful entrepreneurs, much like Alex, are putting this information out there and doing it consistently, and it's in line with what we're saying, then we know we're on the right track, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. So really enjoyed that conversation. Ton of insight, a really nice window into working with larger corporations. So if that's something that our listeners are looking to do, I think Alex could be an absolutely fantastic resource, and clearly just knows his stuff and is really sharp at what he does. So I got to say, first international guest, pretty impressed.
Yes. I mean, I guess we're talking about outside the continental United States and or North, South America.
Yeah. Oh, pretty neat. All right, Doc, I think it's time for us to go wrap up and get back to celebrating our 1 year anniversary, buddy.
You stopped? I mean, I thought we were supposed to keep going.
Only off camera. Yeah. All right. I'm JB. I'll sell you later, folks.
Remember, you can find all our information in the show notes. You can find us on all the social at JB and the Doctor. And of course, at our website, jbandthedoctor.com. We'll check you out later. I'm the Doctor. Peace out, yo.